Ever feel that pull toward the unexplained? The kind of stories that make you wonder, what if? We're diving deep into one of those tonight, the strange case of a young couple vanishing, and the even stranger events that followed, all in a small town called Little Creek. Now, we're pulling from an episode of this show called Alien Abduction, Secrets of the Midwest. And let me tell you, it's a wild one. But we always start with a healthy dose of skepticism, right? Extraordinary claims and all that.
It's a good rule of thumb. Keeps an open mind, but grounds you too.
Exactly. So, Little Creek, picture this, Midwest, small town, everyone knows your name. Sounds pretty peaceful, right?
Almost too peaceful, you could say. The kind of place where things simmer beneath the surface.
Simmer they do. At the heart of this is a couple, Jess and Tom Bradshaw. From what we gather, salt of the earth folks. And then, one July night in 2019, poof, gone. According to the show, they were doing what they always did, relaxing on the porch, looking at the stars. But something felt off that night. Jess and Tom even said so themselves in a recording. They called it too quiet, like they could sense something coming.
You know, that's a classic example of what we call apophenia in psychology. Basically, the human brain is a pattern-seeking machine. We see faces in clouds, hear voices in static. It's trying to make sense of the world even when there's no sense to be made.
So it's like our brains filling in the blanks, even if we're filling them with the wrong picture.
Precisely. We crave meaning, even if it means seeing patterns where none exist.
So we've got Jess and Tom feeling uneasy on this too quiet night, and then, boom, these weird lights show up. And that's when the couple goes missing, like completely vanishes.
That's when things really kick into gear, right? You've got this unsettling event, a town desperate for answers. It's a recipe for speculation to run wild.
And speculate they do. The show even follows up with the police investigation. Sheriff Hank Collins sounds like quite the character. 25 years on the force, and even he was baffled. No sign of a struggle, no tire tracks, nothing. It's like Jess and Tom just stepped off the face of the earth.
Which, of course, just adds fuel to the fire, doesn't it? Our brains crave an explanation, and when a logical one is missing, well, that's where things like social contagion can take root.
Social contagion. Now, that's an interesting term. Sounds kind of scary, like a disease or something.
In a way, it is. Think of it like this. Ideas and emotions. They can spread through a community just like a virus, particularly when there's fear or uncertainty in the air. Look at how fast rumors spread online, or how quickly panic can grip a crowd. That's social contagion in action.
So in Little Creek, with Jess and Tom's disappearance, everyone's on edge, looking for an explanation,
And that's when even the most ordinary events can take on a sinister meaning. The show interviews this local mechanic, Robert, claims he saw these figures, bathed in light, just days before the couple went missing. He even says they weren't human. Now, is that a genuine encounter, or is his memory being influenced by the fear that's gripped the town? It's really tough to say.
Talk about spooky. But it makes you wonder how much of what we believe is shaped by the world around us. Like, if everyone's saying the sky is green, would we start to see it that way too?
That's the power of social influence, and it's something we all experience, whether we realize it or not. But then, just when you think Little Creek couldn't get any stranger, the show throws another curveball. 3 days after vanishing, Tom reappears, found on the outskirts of town, completely out of sorts, and alone.
Alone. What about Jess?
No sign of her. Tom was in rough shape too, from what I understand. Disoriented, couldn't speak, almost like he was in shock.
This is where things really start to feel like an episode of The Twilight Zone. What could possibly explain that?
Well, the human mind is a fragile thing, especially when we're talking about trauma, fragmented memories, hallucinations, even completely fabricated narratives. These are all potential outcomes of experiencing something deeply disturbing.
So you're saying Tom's memories, they might not be reliable. He could be mixing up what's real and what's not.
Exactly. Trauma can have a profound impact on memory and perception. But even with his fragmented memories, there are details that stand out. He keeps mentioning these vivid images, flashes of cold metal, strange beings, the feeling of being watched. And then there's that one chilling phrase he repeats over and over. Those eyes? They weren't human. It sends shivers down your spine just thinking about it.
And if that wasn't enough, Alien Abduction, Secrets of the Midwest, brings in a UFO investigator, this Dr. Lydia Saunders. She shows up with all sorts of fancy equipment and starts picking up these strange readings right where Jess and Tom disappeared.
And here's where things get really interesting.
Hold on. Did they just say, like, radiation, elevated levels and all that?
That's what makes this case so fascinating, right? We go from small-town mystery to, well, something potentially far stranger.
Because if it is radiation, that's not just some weather balloon or a trick of the light, right?
Exactly. And it's tempting to connect those dots, assume the radiation must be linked to Tom's experience, maybe even alien technology. But it's important to remember, just because two things happen around the same time doesn't mean one caused the other. Scientists call that a spurious correlation.
So there could be a perfectly normal explanation for the radiation, even if it seems out of place.
There could be. Geologic activity, strange atmospheric conditions. We've got to keep those possibilities in mind. It's human nature to gravitate towards the most exciting explanation, the one that confirms what we already believe, like confirmation bias.
Okay, I'm with you. But even if the radiation is a red herring, what about Jess? And poor Tom, clearly shaken, whatever happened out there. It's heartbreaking. The show really focuses on his wife's mother, how she's holding on to hope.
And that's what makes these disappearances so difficult, right? That lack of closure. It's a unique kind of loss, what psychologists call ambiguous loss. Not knowing, that's often harder to process than a clear-cut event.
Ambiguous loss. I could see that. It's like if you don't have answers, your mind can run wild with possibilities.
Precisely. And those what-ifs, they can be a heavy weight to carry, especially for Jess's family, clinging to hope while also grappling with the possibility that she might be gone. It's a truly awful situation.
It really makes you think, doesn't it, about the limits of what we know, about the mysteries that are still out there.
Yeah.
Did Jess and Tom stumble onto something they couldn't explain? Some bizarre weather phenomenon, a trick of the light, who knows? Or did something truly extraordinary happen at Little Creek that night? Something else.
It's a question that lingers long after the episode ends, doesn't it?
It does. And maybe, sometimes, the best we can do is sit with that uncertainty. Acknowledge that we don't have all the answers. But hey, that's what makes exploring the unexplained so fascinating, right? Keeps us asking questions, keeps us looking for those answers, even if they're just out of reach. So, until next time, keep an open mind, but don't forget your skepticism. And if you see something strange in the sky, well, maybe think twice before you approach it. You never know what you might find out there.